in Africa.
And
in some
the
of those
Muslims
countries.
also do not have
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
population control, as we are
Exactly.
Christians are really, you know, conscious of it.
Yes. Well, I'd like to cite the country that is the poster child, so to speak, of the Filipino economists who are in favor of RH bill, Thailand. So they keep on saying that in Thailand, they succeeded in controlling population through the massive distribution of condoms in the last century. Well, take a look at what Thailand right now is. Thailand is going to be the first country in the history of humanity to grow old before becoming rich. Thailand is still a poor country. You know, just to cite per capita figures, Thailand has something like $4,000 per capita. Singapore, just to use the standard of Singapore, is $40,000 per capita. But Thailand now has an aging population larger than Singapore. 8.8% of the Thai population is above 65, while in Singapore it's only 8.2. And that's why those economists who are talking about emerging markets exclude Thailand, because they see that in the next 20 years, Thailand will be in a very sorry state of still being poor, but already suffering.
But no offense to Thailand, they're also known to be the AIDS capital.
That's another thing.
No?
Right.
And
That's another thing.
That the distribution of condoms is
That's
very
the second tragedy that has hit Thailand.
I mean,
1 million people with HIV/AIDS. So definitely.
So this will definitely not solve the problem of AIDS. And after all, we're also low in our HIV, right? You know.
Well, they have an explanation for that. I think researchers have that explanation that when you use a condom, it's like taking out an insurance policy. For example, if you have a car or a motorcycle, and if you know that you're insured, you're prone to take more risks. You might even drive your car a little faster. You might park your motorcycle in a more dangerous place. That makes you more open to threats. And if you use a condom every time you have sex, that means that you'll be more daring. You'll have more partners. And exposing yourself to absolutely more risk than you had before when you were not wearing one.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll be talking about the efficacy of condoms maybe a little bit later, but there is a very high rate of malfunctioning of condoms.
Yeah,
it's like 2%.
We will devote a whole show on AIDS and HIV and condoms and the abortive fashions. Let's just zero in now on the overpopulation myth, you know, because that's the argument of everyone, even the common people. You know, when I talk to them, punong-puno na kasi ang Pilipinas, mabuti na magkaroon na tayo ng ganyan. So there are a lot of people are really not informed, you know. So we'd like to really zero in on that overpopulation thing.
Now, another figure we have to cite about this overpopulation thing. You're going to speak about overpopulation, absolutely. It's always in terms of population density. So number of people per square kilometers. Now, let me give you this bit information. Singapore has 15,000 persons per square kilometer. Hong Kong, about 6,000 persons per square kilometer. And they have per capita incomes that, as I said, between $35,000 to $40,000. The Philippines has a population density of just over 300 persons per square kilometer. So how can we call the Philippines overpopulated?
In other words, we have a much wide open space
exactly.
here.
When you have neighbors who are very rich but are so densely populated. In fact, just to finally demolish this argument, the population of the Philippines will peak in 2050 at 145 million persons. And then it will start declining. Because by that time, you will already have less than 2.1 babies per fertile woman. But at 145 million, our population density in 2050 will only be equal to the population density of Korea today, about 430 persons per square kilometer. And Korea is a first world country today. And Korea has no resources whatsoever. So as long as we focus on education, training, values formation, we will be more than first world in 2000.
I agree with that.
2045.
Totally.
Yes.
Yes, and then we shouldn't be worried because we are sending our people all over the world. So these Filipinos are really a gift to the world.
Ibig mong sabihin, ang isang pamilya na kumakalamang sikmura sa isang barong-barong, pupuntahan mo at sasabihin mo, dahil ikaw ay naghihirap, dahil wala kang makain, etong solusyon, bibigyan kita ng kondom. paano mo kakainin ng kondom kung kumakalam ang sikmura mo? Kaya hindi po maintindihan nating mga kababayan na hindi yan ang solusyon. Hanapan ng hanap buhay, bigyan ng magagandang pagkakakitaan para lumago ang ekonomiya ng ating bansa.
Okay, we'll be talking about the RH bill, the effect of this to our nation. We'll be right back after this short message, so stay with us. More to come. Welcome back to Heart Talk. Gumagandang usapan, and let's talk more about the effects of this RH bill in case that's become to pass, no? So let's talk about, will the poor be richer, if this bill is going to be passed?
Well, I can say absolutely no. If the RH bill is passed, there will be more poor people. Again, common sense, no? I'm using the favorite expression now of Manny Pacquiao, who is definitely very pro-life. Common sense, no? The vast majority of the poor, 75% of the poor, are in the rural areas. They are farmers. And it is common sense that you cannot tell a poor farmer, it was already mentioned, to have only 2 children. If actually the RH bill succeeds in convincing these people to have only 2 children, they'll even starve because a household in the farm has been neglected. No irrigation system, no water, no farm-to-market roads. They have to do everything mano-mano. And so that's why they need a large family to be able to survive. In fact, we know that a lot of grade school children don't go beyond grade 6 because they're needed as hands. Now, it is nonsense to say we have to help the poor to have smaller sizes because the poor are in situations where responsible parenthood, incidentally, that's one thing I would like to remind people. Responsible parenthood means limiting or spacing children when there is an extraordinary threat to the life of the mother or when there's extreme poverty. Or it could mean planning for a large size if there are economic reasons, and either in the case of the farmer, economic reasons to have a large family, or in the case of rich people, there's absolutely no reason why they should limit the number of children.
Right.
So people always forget that. They always say responsible parenthood, but it always means limiting the number of children.
So it's not just an economic issue, it's also a moral issue.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So definitely, it will not help alleviate poverty. It will even worsen our situation. Right?
And not only that, because our experience already in the period where family planning was aggressively pursued during the time of Marcos, the last 5 or 6 years,
Right.
was that all the money spent was completely wasted precisely because it is so anti-cultural. We're even talking about moral reason.
Right.
Do you know what happened? And this was a public confession made by Blas Ople, who was Secretary of Education,
Right.
Minister of Education, of Labor at the time. He said they were aghast when they found out that the people who received pills were using them as fertilizers.
Correct.
And the people who received condoms were covering mangoes and guavas with the condoms to protect them against insects.
So it was a total waste.
Absolutely. They were not. Because people, especially in the rural areas, just feel it's completely against their tradition to be contraceptive in mentality.
So how much of the national budget is allotted to this?
Well, as the attorney said, equivalent to the budget of these state universities. No?
Around $1 billion. That was the Lagman proposal before. Dadagdagan ko lang yung sinabi ni Dr. Villegas na ito ay talagang taliwas sa kultura ng Pilipino. Yung mga nanay na nakikinig o nanonood sa amin ngayon, yung mga magulang, di po ba sinasabi natin na kahit na mahirap ang buhay, igagapang natin ang ating mga anak, mapagtapos lamang? Tatanungin ko kayo, sino sa anak ninyo ang gusto ninyong sanang namatay na o hindi na pinanganak? Walang sasagot na meron sa mga anak niya na gusto niyang hindi nabuhay. This is so anti-Catholic, this is so anti-Christian, this is also anti-Filipino.
Anti-humanity.
Anti-humanity.
Definitely, right? So let's talk about the moral